That's a candle burning. We're live here. Here we go. Here's Darren. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Here we go. I'm just going to share this with some of our friends here.
Psyched Out.
Oh, here we are.
Whoa.
Okay, just bear with us for a second. Okay. Share it on my page. All right, here we go. So, welcome everybody to this first edition, I guess, of a special new series we're going to be doing, revolving around plant medicine, psychedelics, and everything to do with, I guess, attaining different states of consciousness. I think it's a good way to do it. So we created a documentary called Psyched Out. Just going to get in here something better. Called Psyched Out. If you haven't seen it, it's for free on YouTube. We're going to have a link here shortly put up. It's for free. It's about my experience with plant medicine. I go into a bunch of topics as well. And my good friend here, Darren, created some amazing music that you will hear inside the actual film itself, which is very transcendent. And so far the feedback on the film has been amazing. A lot of people have been reaching out and saying how much they enjoyed it and how much it helped to change their perspective on plant medicines. So my original intention with creating this was to create something that I could share with all the people who would ask me about my experience, like my mother, like my friends and family, because they had seen this huge shift in me, and their perception or their programming of what plant medicine psychedelics was negative. It was a drug. It was something not to play around with, which it isn't something to play around with. It's something very serious and something very sacred, and something that's not for everyone, and we'll talk a bit about that as well. But if you feel called to it, I think people should have the right to explore their own consciousness in whatever ways they feel comfortable, and sometimes uncomfortable.
A lot of times uncomfortable.
So again, this is Darren. Darren, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a sound healer. That's my primary way that I engage the world in service, and I'm also a shamanic musician or sacred musician.
Okay.
And like to think of myself as a spiritual teacher or wisdom warrior, as I'm also calling myself to be a little more hip.
Okay.
And yeah, I've been on the spiritual path for, I guess, about almost 20 years now, and had a spiritual awakening when I was 22. And since then, I've just been incredibly impassioned to know all about spirituality, from ancient wisdom to new wisdoms, and disseminate all of that, because I truly believe there's a awakening happening on the planet. And I think spirituality has a very pragmatic, actually, role to play in that evolution of our species.
Cool. So tell me a bit about your awakening, and and at what point, if any, in your journey, these plant medicines sort of came into the picture.
Well, I mean, medicines in general, like as a teenager, when I was like 16, I started experimenting with LSD and mushrooms and MDMA. But of course, it was more like recreational. Although, I had like a really good group of friends who were quite intellectual for our age. So a lot of the time we were like taking LSD and just having existential conversations for hours and hours and hours, and loving the expansion of the mind and the type of synthesis that starts to happen. You get out of that duality-based left-right hemisphere, and you really start to be able to unite a lot of ideas in a very fast kind of hyperspace way. So I sort of began with psychedelics, when I was really, really young, and it did open up doors of perception, as Aldous Huxley says. But, I was just a deep thinker. I wasn't a spiritual thinker until, I was 22, and very mundanely, I was just working on this amazing essay at university on 2001 Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick, and I was studying media information technoculture and also an elective in Asian philosophy for the first time in my life, studying like Buddhism and Vedic wisdom, and just having my mind blown. If you've ever read the Eastern Enlightenment teachings, I mean, they're just like, it's like they were all on psychedelics and then writing this like incredible mystical poetry filled with dense information.
See, before I started getting really into using psychedelics in a way that was more than recreational, I was reading a lot of these things, and a lot of their descriptions and a lot of the experiences was now what I can understand a little bit better, that I've had sort of these experiences with the psychedelics. And, it leads me to sort of believe that, maybe there are other ways to reach these similar states. I haven't got there with meditation and breath work. I've got some really interesting spaces that I haven't reached with these other tools, but yeah, you can absolutely see some of the things they're describing and the experiences they're having. You just add the word like psychedelics into it, and we go into that a bit in our film, like the history, and like how all these things can easily be translated. Even Christianity, a lot of experiences can easily,
Well, have you heard my song "Mushroom Jesus"?
Yes, I love that song.
It's very loved.
Yeah, maybe you can play it at the end. We'll close off.
No, I don't. The thing is, that song was completely channeled, so it's different every time. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's a lot more plant medicines that were used, in ancient times. I mean, part of the path I've been on is reclaiming the European indigenous identity and studying like the Gnostics and the mystery schools of Indo-Europe. And the pyramids were apparently like initiation temples, and in some of those mystery schools, they would drink, and apparently the Holy Grail itself, it wasn't the Grail as an object that was necessarily what was valuable. That became sort of the outset of materialism, but it was really more the Grail was used in these initiation ceremonies where they would drink a psychedelic brew, and in some of the Gnostics it was called a kikion, which is a kind of fermented barley. And interestingly enough, some of the literature says that in order to get prepared for that initiation ceremony where you would drink this brew and literally interface with the consciousness of the earth, who they called the goddess Sophia, some would have to train 20 years, and they would just do it once. Wow. They would just do it once. That's all they would need. In that one time that they'd do it, they'd get this sort of alignment that would see them for the rest of their life. So it's interesting to see that it's in ancient culture in the West as well, in Christianity even, there are seeds of psychedelic use. I mean, go listen to Mushroom Jesus, you'll see there's 3 parts to the song. I cover the whole Santa Claus story and how that has to do with mushrooms as well. And this painting they found in 12th century France with Jesus literally holding a basket of psilocybin, magic mushrooms. I mean, it's right there, it's documented. What's going on?
Yeah, one of the theories that, I can't remember where I heard this, about the story of Jesus turning water into wine.
Right.
Where it was actually turning water into mushroom tea. And, that makes a lot of sense, I guess it can be perceived as a miracle when you run out of wine to have that, but that can be like a real shift.
I think it's way more pervasive than we know. And the Vedic, India, I hold cannabis ceremonies once a month, and part of my research and exploration into that and inspiration is Shiva, who is one of the primary deities in the Vedic tradition of India. Shiva is said to have brought marijuana from this very holy mountain from the gods to humanity, specifically to give us spiritual inspiration. So it's just all over the place. These plant medicines have been our allies. They've been infusing our culture. I was musing over the summer at this cannibalist retreat I was a part of, just to think about all the amazing art that was basically inspired by psychedelics or cannabis for that matter. Most of the art and music, especially that we love, these people were probably, high most of the time. Look at the Beatles. Come on.
When I see some of the temples in like the Middle East, that side of the world, you see the intricate, whether it's stained glass or jewel work or like crystal work, it looks like a full-on DMT experience.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It is interesting that you see that all over the place, the same kind of universal consciousness visualizations. I call it universal because usually when you do psychedelics, you will start to see these patterns and such. But that's not to say that they were all just using psychedelics. I mean, there's a lot of evidence as well that they were attaining this in high states of meditation also.
Well, the chemicals present in the psychedelics are also stuff that we create internally.
Totally.
It's like, how do we turn that on inside of us? And I feel like, this renaissance, this re-emerging renaissance of psychedelic use in modern society is almost like a training wheel, saying, hey, like, this is something you should be experiencing in your life. Maybe on a regular basis, maybe you just need it once, but these are states that you can achieve, and the learnings that come through that, like the spiritual understanding that I've achieved through some of these experiences, I could have never got in any of the books that I read. And although I read them and I really theoretically understood them, there was that experiential learning that was missing. And I did a long fast at one point because I saw a lot of books I was reading about this long-term fasting.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And seeing where
you were hardcore,
where we could reach with that, and like you could start feeling something changing, perceptions changing. But it wasn't until I did like some of these psychedelics that I felt this like unified connection to source, or feeling a presence, telling me something or imparting this knowledge. And he's like, listen, look over here. I don't want to look at that. It's scary, but look, you need to see this. And then, boom, you have this understanding. It's like, okay, I now understand this part of myself that I didn't want to face. Specifically with things like ayahuasca, like psilocybin. And most recently, I had an experience with 5-MeO, and we were just talking about that earlier. And if anyone's had a 5-MeO experience, you might be able to relate to this, or not. Because the one thing that I find interesting about the 5-MeO is trying to put it into words. I've listened to other people talk on podcasts about their experience. I didn't find it overly visual, but I just felt this overwhelming, like atomic explosion of love and connection and gratitude and all those high frequencies, bliss. And a moment in time where just everything was like stopped. Time didn't exist, I didn't exist, and it was just like this pure connection. I was rolling in it, bathing in it, and as my consciousness sort of came back to the space that I was in, I was still just feeling that expansion of like love, and all the negativity and fears were just like burned away. Like the light was just like, listen, you don't have to tap into this. And that was a little while ago now, and I still feel that. Like I've been shifted in a way that is hard to explain. And I know that whenever some of those lower vibrational feelings or tendencies come up, it's like I know that I don't have to tune into them. I know it's a fragment of my mind. I know like if I go back into here, it's like, okay, I can just stay with that energy. It's not about suppressing it. It's about acknowledging where the feeling's coming from, but knowing that I don't need to invest any energy in it.
Yeah, well, that's like the essence, presence in a lot of ways, which to me is like the foundation of most spiritual practice. Like when you're present in your body, in the energy field of your body, as Eckhart Tolle calls it, the inner body awareness, there's an infinite kind of unfoldment that can happen there. I've done meditations or things where I can literally start to feel energies and that are so profound, and even prayer. Like to me, when you're praying and you're building that sense of reverence, you start to contact like these really supreme kind of feelings of intelligence and cosmic kind of connection, and that feels amazing. Like we human beings need to experience bliss and the mystical almost on a daily basis, and they need to get in there. And plant medicines, I see, are like a great way to open up the doors of perception, as Aldous Huxley said. And then, like for me, like I use them more just like here and there now, just to like maybe even like maintenance of my mystical states. But I've had enough experiences now, and I have practices that I can sort of get there naturally. Like I'm really enjoying doing focusing. I don't know if you've ever done a focusing session. It's like a guided meditation psychological tradition that came out of the 70s, and it's basically a facilitator just guiding you into your inner landscape and taking you on a purposeful journey. And I think, for me, a bit of the backstory, I've been a channeler of sound and music ever since I was a child, so it's very easy for me to loop into that state, whereas for other people I think it can be a little tougher. But that's also why I find sometimes psychedelic use for me now I'm so sensitive that it has to be a really, really, really right environment. I'm sure you probably feel the same way. Like I did LSD for the first time a couple years ago in Guatemala at the Cosmic Convergence Festival, and it was the first time I've done it since like I was a teenager. And I only took like a half dose. You know, I really just wanted a microdose, but it turned out to be a little more powerful than a half dose somehow. And I didn't have a very good experience. You know, I had a good experience when I was with my partner at the time in the tent, and we were just like cuddling and just being in our bodies, and it was really nice. But then the minute we went out and frolicked to the festival, and so many energies and different music and stuff, it was just way too overwhelming. I was hearing like everyone's thoughts and picking up on things, and there was a lot of like dark, negative energy.
Did I tell you about my Burning Man experience?
No. Did you go to Burning Man this year?
No, 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So it's not the talk for this you know, I'm gonna get into it in another episode about it, but same thing. And it was like the lessons that came after was like, are you just playing with these sort of energies, or are you using them as a tool? You know, and in that thing, it was just like, I'm here, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna dive in, and I had the best experience and the worst experience
all in one night
in 24 hours. Whew. But that was part of the teaching that I needed, and so in a way, it was, I guess, unfolding as it should have, you know, synchronistically. And it was very dark at times, and but I needed that. And the darkness is a teacher, and plant medicines will bring a lot of darkness to the forefront.
Totally.
But it's part of that purge. It's part of that, you need to see this, you need to understand, and then I can let it go. And the experience that I had at Burning Man was beyond psychedelic. It was like, it carried forward like days and weeks and other crazy synchronicities, but I'll get into that another time. And I'll share it with you as well.
But there's a lot of darkness, you know, like I worked with a Gnostic teacher a long time ago in astral traveling, and he would say like the astral realm, which is kind of like just above the third dimension, the fourth and the fifth, which is more the realm of thoughts and feelings. It is really infiltrated by a lot of dark stuff. So I almost feel like before people do plant medicines, to just like give them means to protect themselves.
It's
just
a good
tools.
segue into this conversation.
Oh, okay, cool. Tools to protect themselves, because it can be intense to witness. And I know like some of the times I've drank ayahuasca, it's just been so full on to witness. And you're right, you do have to see those things. Like sometimes catching a glimpse, for example, of the ecological destruction that we've wrecked on the planet, which is something that I experienced in an ayahuasca ceremony in Mexico. Whew, I needed to see that, but man, it was like mercy. It like brought me to my knees.
And I like to sort of, but it's very interesting that you went into that, is the role of darkness in this experience we call life. Because what I'm learning more and more is that as my knowledge increases, like the infiniteness of reality is ever reaching. And our experience is so finite on that scale. It's like the spectrum of all experience that we're experiencing now is almost like nothing. You know? And everything plays a role. So the darkness in our experience is part of our experience for a reason, or else it probably wouldn't exist. So is it pushing humanity to have realizations? Is it pushing us to have our own inner realizations? And you know, when people say, you know, protecting yourself, you know, maybe not protecting yourself brings on a darkness within you, but that's something that's going to push your evolution. So maybe you didn't want that to happen, and you're trying to avoid it, but by experiencing that, it's now going to push you to have a deeper sort of experience and more of a transformation, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm articulating it correctly as how I feel it.
It's funny because we talked about this last night, because yesterday was the new moon in Scorpio, and you know, I hold the new moon sound bath and cacao ceremony every new moon. I've been working with the new moon for like 10 years. I love working with the new moon. It's just, you're always working with the new cycles, the new astrology, and I mean, Scorpio is the darkness in the astrological chart. It's where we're called to do the shadow work, and some really beautiful teachings came through. And you know, if you've ever seen a scorpion, like I've seen a big black scorpion crawl out of a fire in India. Like it's one of the most fearsome animals on the planet. You know, just seeing that hooked tail with the stinger. And if you think about it, it's really symbolic of the energy of Scorpio, which is intense emotions that are really hid in the darkness, which is our unconscious that we don't want to face. So the lesson of Scorpio shows up and it stings you. And that sting, I've never been stung by a scorpion, but I've seen people get stung by scorpions. You just wake up. There's no choice but to face that pain. But of course, I had a partner who got stung, and we were like icing the pain and like trying to keep the pain at bay. And then we ran out of ice, and then I knew at that point, look, what's going to happen, honey, is the pain's going to get really, really fierce, and then your body's going to build the antibodies and the adaptability. But we're going to have to. It's like when you get burned. You're putting that under the cold sink, but after a while, you're just going to have to take that off, and you're just going to have to go through that wall. That is what shadow work is. So it's
Going
like
through the wall.
Well, exactly, and that's why the work is important. And when I say protection, it doesn't mean we want to evade. It's just when we're facing our darkness, our shadow, or our parts of ourselves that we're unaware of, and they come up, we want to be able to learn how to sit with them and be present and have a conversation with them and really alchemize them. Because most of us, we stay in our egos, and we tend to like thrash about, not want to face it. And we usually go into anger and frustration. I was just driving over here, and I had some really intense thoughts and emotions going through my head. And of course, I'm driving a car. I can't be deep in them. So the real teaching that I gave to people last night was when these intense, darkened emotions come up, make time and space to just sit with them.
Mm-hmm.
Light a candle, even do a ritual if you want to actually create activating transformational space. But for most people, they don't do that. They don't know how to do that. So when a dark thing comes up, like a dark, intense emotion, something, they'd rather like run away from it. But of course, they can't run away from it. So they just stay in this like conflict arena where they're just feeling angry and frustrated, and that can loop and loop and loop and loop. So, but the minute they just stop and are like, okay, let me just feel that. And you go through the pain, it's like really fucking intense. And then there's a breaking point. And all of a sudden, all this wisdom starts to emerge and bloom. And then you get like the wisdom in the wound.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful process, and I feel like plant medicines, in my experience, have created that experience, and that's what I use to integrate in my life now. Half of the experience, or maybe less than half, happens in the actual ceremony or in the actual use, and then the rest is how do you integrate this into your life? How do you take these lessons we learn and make them into your everyday reality, so that when you see other darkness or feel these feelings of fear and guilt or shame, what is the message, that you need to sort of incorporate. So it's like, yes, there's a lesson in this experience for you to grow spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever.
Get the message.
So if anyone has any questions, guys, we're talking here with Darren, and for those of you just tuned in, Psyched Out is a film that we created. Darren was one of the contributors. He contributed some of his amazing music. He's a sound healer. He's an amazing guy. Check him out. What's your website?
Darren Austin Hall.
.com. Yeah. You'll hear some of his magic on there. Just gonna check the comments if there's any questions.
There's a lot of people watching here. This is great.
Yeah. Just some comments here. Cool. So yeah, I think we covered a lot of things here. Is there anything else you thought we needed to dive into?
Not really. I mean, that's really like that covers a lot of terrain, and it's just amazing, that nowadays we're really at the forefront of witnessing these plant medicines being respected and actually being taken into medical environments now, where they're being clinically studied, and there's a potential that they could be integrated into the healthcare system at one point. We should all be advocates for that and recognize that these medicines heal us on the level of our mind and our consciousness, and that's where the problems are in our world.
I don't even think it's an if anymore, it's when. Because we're so screwed up these days with the medical system and opiate addiction and anxiety, depression, and these tools are so powerful and they're so direct, and sometimes all it takes is like one 5-MeO experience or one ayahuasca experience, and people are shifted. Sometimes it takes a lot more, and it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of integration as well, but there's nothing that works anywhere close to this stuff, in my opinion.
Integration is really key.
And so, I'll talk a bit about integration quickly. It's so important to, once you've had this experience, not to go back into your environment that put you there in the first place, and that's both mental and physical environment. And a lot of people will have this experience, they'll shift, and then they'll slowly regress because they're going back into their old patterns, putting their energy into those old things that got them there in the first place. So creating a practice, whether it's meditation, breath work, finding a community of people, and not necessarily like-minded individuals, because you don't always want the people that think the exact same as you, because you want to, you know, openly discuss and challenge. But finding open-minded community where people are just open-hearted, you know, non-judgmental, and there to support you. And I think that's something that's lacking. You know, the online community is amazing for connecting people, but how many real connections do you have? How many people can you, you know, hug, cry on their shoulder, express how you feel when you feel like shit, you know? So finding these things, and, you know, I'm an optimist, and I believe in the power of human connection.
Totally.
So, you know, share the movie, connect with your friends, speak to people, share the way you feel. When you open and set the intentions to attract these things in your life, I've borne witness. Is that the proper
born
term?
witness, yeah.
I've borne witness to that personally, where I've seen, you know, me setting intentions.
Yes.
And yeah, just having faith and belief that things are getting better, because they are.
Oh, and if I just want to mention, like, I have a new album out called Songs of Source, and people are actually using my music in ayahuasca ceremonies.
Okay, well, there you go.
I just found that out recently. I actually have a spoken word piece on my Death of Love EP, and people have been playing it at the end of Journeys, and I've been getting messages from people being like, "Whoa, man, it was so epic listening to your spoken word piece." So that's pretty exciting to me, because, you know, I'm very comfortable in the shamanic terrain of making, and I've had some opportunities to make music while in those ceremonies before. It's a privilege, because you're so sensitive to the vibrations. It's profound to perform under those.
Yeah, no, I've played guitar a few times in that setting, and something about the sound and the psychedelic experience, it's like, takes it to a whole nother level. Like, it's like the music hits you in your soul, you know. And I've had experiences where, like, a change in music just brought me to a whole different memory or experience, like that vibration. Just like,
Absolutely.
And I will say this though, you know, like, there are traditionalists in the plant medicine community that are very, very, I don't know the right term because I don't want to offend anybody, but just very rigid regimented in the way they think. And, you know, I feel like as humanity we're evolving, and things are happening, and I'm not saying it would be stupid, but, you know, we shouldn't discount things like technology and music and sound as part of these experiences. Totally. You know, like the first time a rattle came into a ceremony, I'm sure it was like, oh, you can't bring that. You know, you made that with your hand. That's, you know, or the first time a guitar or a flute came into an ayahuasca ceremony. Yeah. You know, so now things are changing where some people are playing music, and I think a lot of it has to do with the intention of how the flow is, and, you know, you're just putting on a song, or you're really putting that intention into that curation of the ceremony.
Sure.
And I think intention plays a huge role in all of this.
100%.
You know, like, you know, creating the right space, you know, not being egotistical, doing it for the wrong reasons. And, you know, I recommend anyone wanting to participate in a ceremony to really tap in, you know, do some work beforehand, meditation, breath work, and really try to connect with whoever's going to be in that space with you, whether it's especially a facilitator or anyone else. You know, just try to make sure that you're not falling into the wrong hands, or maybe that's what you need. You know, who knows? But yeah. So if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I'm curious. Who's out there? What's going on?
Kevin, such an amazing movie message. Thank you for this. Our pleasure. Merci for taking your time and attention being focused the keys to unlocking healing. Our pleasure. You should come to India. Most welcome. I'd love to. It's on my list of things to do. Properly, things you'll get in Dark Jungle Rave. Okay.
Dark Jungle Rave in India. Send us the invite, man.
Yeah, we're there.
I'll come DJ, do some sound bathing. I love India. Can't wait to go back.
And yeah, I think that's it, guys. So if you haven't seen the movie, please check it out.
Psyched Out.
And send us your messages, comments, likes. It's on YouTube. It's for free. Absolutely. I'll post the link on this video. It's also on our Facebook page and on psychedoutmovie.com. Thank you for all your support. So much gratitude and love. Thank you, Darren, for spending some time with me
Always
today.
A pleasure, bro. It's
We'll
good to see you again.
Nice. For sure. Okay, guys, have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Much love.
And much love. Yes, thank you.